What is going on, everyone? It is Tyler McKinney back here again, and let's go ahead and let's get into those instant reactions. Man, was it another good day of football. Listen, these were two close games. You're looking at a score of 17-14 and then a 23-16 game. Listen, both of these games were one-possession games, and that's exactly what the XFL was looking for and what they were looking at. I had a fun time again. Listen, the XFL is not only good football, but it's fun football, and also all of the other things that are happening outside of the actual game on the field are interesting, and they're great storylines that kind of keep you coming back as well. All in all, it was a great day of football today. I have kind of some overall kind of takeaways from kind of the games of football today. First and foremost, these teams aren't as widely spread out as what we thought. Listen, I think that the teams with the talent, they're a lot closer than what we think. The second takeaway from this is that the home teams, for whatever reason, seem to just be winning. And that seems to be the way that things have kind of gone. Both of the home teams went ahead and got the win today. And it'll be interesting to see if some of that changes. But the home teams definitely seem to be benefiting from being at home and playing at home. But that's just kind of another one of those kind of, I don't know, just kind of takeaways that you can take from it that I don't know if, you can really read too much into it. But that's what we got there. The third thing is that, listen, the quarterback play in the XFL, I think, is just fine. I think part of the problem is we've had some of the wrong quarterbacks in. Maybe it's the wrong guy has been the guy that's playing. And let's go ahead and let's start there and let's move on into the games. And we'll elaborate on that in a moment here, because for me, that is truly a point that I want to reiterate and I want to look into as we go. Our first game, listen, this game was what I thought it would be. It was going to be a close game. I will say that LA was handicapped in this game, and LA was the team that made the mistakes, and that New York took advantage of them. Again, New York at home taking advantage of their opponent. Now, I will say this is kind of a sad point for New York. New York has played terrible the past 2 weeks, and it's shown not only on the field with their field of play, but it also showed in their attendance today. This is the lowest attendance that we've had at an XFL game. Granted, it was still over 12,000 people, which is still great. When you're getting over 10,000 people, it's great. In a stadium that large, it doesn't look great, but, here we are. So 12,000 people, which I think had this team been playing better and had some more pieces in place, I think that, the attendance would have stayed up probably somewhere above 15,000 people. But listen, when your team is in shambles the way that the New York Guardians have been, and, you're just, people are just not into it. We go into this game. This game was a fun game. It was a back and forth. Both of the teams had a chance to win it. We've had some missed field goals in this game, some blocks, some things. It was fun, and it was neat, and it was exciting. Josh Johnson threw a pick, and really it wasn't his fault. Wide receiver just really didn't catch it. He threw a really good ball. Ball got bounced up, and the defender, again, my man Summers, making a big play. And again, these are guys that I mentioned. Him and Soro were all around the field and making plays. And those guys on the back end, they seem to just have a nose for the ball and to find the ball. And they did in this game. When I look at this game really comes down to just managing the game. And Luis Perez was the game manager for them. Now you look at his stats and stuff. Actually, they're not bad. 18 for 26. He had 69% completion rating, pretty good. Only 150 yards, and he had a touchdown, no interceptions, and that was key there. And he made some plays with his feet. And he was able to move in the pocket when he needed to, and he made really good plays and really good decisions when he was in there. And And really, that made the difference for this New York team. This New York team's going to want to establish the run, and with him doing that and extending things, really gave them the opportunity to really establish that run. Victor, man, they need to get this cat the ball more times. Now, granted, he got the ball 18 times. 82 yards. Couldn't get over that mark. I've been waiting for the first 100-yard rusher, and we didn't get it today. But listen, he is a bowling ball, and he's running hard. And especially if they can stay on schedule, they can go ahead and do their thing, score when they can. Late in the game, you give the ball to Victor, they're going to pound and pull away from the game. That's how they're built, that's how they're structured, and that's how they're going to do things. And I think Luis Perez is the perfect quarterback for them, and it showed today. This is my hope. I hope that the coaching staff has realized that, and I hope that they're going to go with Luis Perez going forward. Because if you ask me, and ask a lot of people, we have been saying, get rid of these quarterbacks for weeks. We've been telling you who to put in, and you haven't been putting them in. And I feel sometimes I feel like beside myself, and I wish I had them in front of me to tell you, I told you so. There was a reason why this guy was a tier 1 quarterback, and for some reason you have him as your third string quarterback. He comes out and he plays a heck of a lot better than any other option that you've had. He looked really good today against a very good defense. That defense didn't play bad. Listen, they held him to 17 points on the day. And there were some errors, there were some issues on the Wildcats side of things that maybe could have changed some things around, made some things a little different. But all in all, it was really good. I can tell you that there were two things definitely on the Wildcats side of the ball that made a big difference. One, Nelson Spruce, he really is kind of the key to their passing game. And not that, look, listen, Josh Johnson, he passed for 330 yards. So that wasn't necessarily the issue. It was that it disrupted their offense. And, he's a guy who's found the end zone, and he's known how to get into the end zone and made a lot of catches for him. The other thing is that they got a spark last week from Mr. Excitement himself, Montez Carter, and with him out today, it really showed. Now, the over-under, and I told you, if Hood had over 10 carries, he was going to fumble. He only had one today, so we didn't get to any of that. But Harris looked pretty decent, and I would imagine you will probably see once Montez Carter comes back, you're going to see him, Larry Rose, and Harris become the guys who are going to be shuffling in and out. I don't think all is lost for LA, but I think it's going to be a hard battle for them, and I don't really see them getting back into the race for the West. I think that they're going to be a really hard win for a lot of these teams when they play them. But I think that for LA right now, I think that at 1-3, you could almost pretty much just kind of stick a fork in them right now. I think that they're pretty much done. Now, do I think that they could do a lot of things? Could they come back? Yeah. Listen, we don't know with the XFL. It's going to be hard to predict things. They could come out next week and, just light another fire. I think that the injuries, though, this week definitely hurt them, and it showed. Just that they're, some of their playmakers weren't there. Now, I will say that Trey McBride has come on, and he's just been phenomenal for this team. And it really showed so far for them that the trade that they made is really paying off with him now healthy, and 2 weeks get to see him. And I think that just missing Nelson Spruce was just enough to kind of throw them off today with that. And I think that those were two guys that made some really big athletic plays for them that I think that they missed this week. And I think that was a difference. Now, listen, this is professional football. The little things are the things that matter. And that's why I really like the way that Luis Perez played. He played, and it was just not making those little decisions, those things to throw the ball, to quickly pick up the first down, to move in the pocket, to not throw that ball. All of those little things that he was doing that kept them in the game, that kept them going, that kept them alive. I really liked the way that he would kind of extend plays, and I don't mean with his feet, but just with his movement and things, to where he'd buy himself a little bit more time to be able to let that wide receiver get open. He could hit them and actually hit them accurately. I think that that's been the biggest problem that they've had too, is that Matt McGloin has been inaccurate down the field, and so that's eliminated their down the field play. And I think that Luis Perez, with his elusiveness and I don't mean him being fast runner, I just mean him being able to move in the pocket, feel the pocket, and be able to make a little bit more time and be accurate and make good decisions, really made a big difference for him. Now, granted, this is one game, but that's kind of what he's done where he's played and where he's been. He hasn't really been, Mr. Excitement, but he has been a guy that's played well. He's looked good, and we'll see how this continues. I think that he's in a really good system for him, a system that's going to want to run the ball, and that he can take advantage of play action when that happens, when they're keying on the run, and then he can find the open guy, hit the open guy, and it showed today. He made some really big NFL-type throws, and, I just think that that's, good and fantastic. Listen, as we look at this game and we look at it, I don't know how you can come away and say that there was bad quarterback in this play in this game at all. You can't. This was a professional football game. This kind of remind me of something that you would watch on a Sunday. That's what it was. It looked like a professional NFL game. Probably a little bit faster, time-wise than that with it, but it kept my interest the whole time. Excuse me. I thought that was good. And, again, getting back to these storylines and all of this stuff, all of the disjointedness of the New York Guardians and what were they going to do and how were they going to come out and really kind of, get back, and if they were going to get in, back in this and all of that. Well, as we look at it now, that kind of played out throughout the game. And there was a leadership that came with Luis Perez in this game. And as he came in the game, and you could hear him, especially, and I love having these guys mic'd up, because not only do we get to hear what they say, but we kind of get their personalities and what's coming out and, and how they're handling people and talking things. This guy, he's cool, calm, collective. He's in control. He knows when to, take the blame on himself and, and move on. And he really had, command of that offense. When he was in there, he was the guy in charge. And listen, the guys, you would have thought that this was a different team that was on the field with him there. Seriously, you would have thought that these were totally different guys than the guys that were there playing last week. I mean, that's how big of a difference having just him in there made. You didn't see Silberman, shooting his mouth off, going after other players. Now, I would say he probably, he made some readjustments internally, relooking at himself, evaluating himself and what he did. And there's that. But just having that commander of the offense in that, I think that was really, that's half of it. And he, I think getting Matt McGloin up in the box, getting him away from everything, they need to just stick with Luis Perez and go forward with it. And I want to now turn my attention. I was talking about, we talked about bad quarterback play and this and that, and I want to go on this tangent. I want to talk about the wrong quarterback play, because I've mentioned this before. A lot of these guys aren't necessarily guys that shouldn't be in the NFL or can't be in the NFL or don't have the talent to be in the NFL. A lot of these quarterbacks, especially the quarterback position, because it's one, so vital, and two, so much is invested in the players in this position that it's hard to give up on a guy because you put so much into him. So when you got a guy like Jordan Ta'amu, when you got Ta'amu and you've got some of these other guys, whether it be a PJ Walker, whether it be, the list goes on. You don't have the money invested in them as you would your first round draft pick or your second round draft pick. This guy that's supposed to be the face of the franchise, and you need to figure out how to get him to work because you don't want to lose all that money or lose that draft pick that you invested in him, to where if this guy doesn't come out and show you a difference in practice, he's going to get benched. And that's kind of what we saw here. So Luis Perez, he comes into this team and he's late to the team. And the other guys, listen, there's not a whole much different that you're seeing different in practice. They're going through the motions and that, to where if the guy doesn't just ultimately stand out, he might not even get a shot. The other thing is that that's if he gets any reps, because you're already into first team and second team, reps and that, to where if he comes in, he's the third guy, he's not really getting the reps. So, as you're looking at this, and how many times do you look at the NFL and they just have the wrong quarterback in there? And this week, we're finally starting to see these teams switch up their quarterbacks. This season is short. You're in game 5. Next week, we're half of the way over. Like, you're not going to be, you can't ride this thing that long. And I think that you got to give a guy some opportunity. And listen, I feel bad for the other guys in the situation, but I feel really good for Luis Perez. He finally got a shot to show what he can do, and he showed what he could do on the field, and that was great. And so as we go with this, I'm sick and tired of this, bad quarterback play, or this league needs better quarterback play, this and that. If you look at this game alone, you're going to look at yourself and wonder, what are you talking about bad quarterback play? You got good quarterback play from two guys. And this just goes to show you that there is talent across the board in this league, and that some of these guys just need an opportunity to get out there and play, and they're going to show you just how good they are. And speaking of just how good they are, let's go to St. Louis. That place was rocking again. However, you guys let me down. I was hoping you were going to sell out the whole building. You guys only had over 27,000 people. Granted, only over 27,000 people, but you still had less people than what you had last week. However, you guys were rocking. You guys were loving it. And listen, I'm loving it. Right now, it's looking at, we're about 40,000 people one day in. Now, we got 2 games tomorrow. It's going to be hard to break 85,000. You're going to need 45,000 people tomorrow. And unless everybody and their mother and their brother and their cousin and everybody in the state of Texas shows up to that Dallas game tomorrow afternoon, I doubt that we're getting there. And I don't know. I haven't looked at the ticket sales. I haven't looked at anything. Well, I'll see it tomorrow afternoon when they announce what the attendance was there. But it's going to be hard, especially with that Tampa Bay game and them not having Quentin Flowers. I don't even know if people who had tickets, might not show up because of that. Who knows? We'll talk about all of that stuff tomorrow. But St. Louis, you guys were rocking again, and you got a great team, and it showed. But it was one of those things here that we're still a one-possession game at the end. These teams weren't that big of a difference in the teams. And really, on paper, had we had B.J. Daniels the whole game, this might have been a different story. That's just what I'm saying, the way that I'm looking at it. And that just goes to, again, continue on what we're talking about, these quarterbacks. We have the wrong quarterback in there. Sometimes it takes you a while to figure that out. And I think that Seattle is finally figuring out that that's not the case. And listen, I don't know why. I have seen Tamau. I've seen him throw the ball. I think that this guy is a starter in the NFL. If he gets on some squad, he's anticipating throws. He's leading wide receivers with his throws. He's throwing it in tight pockets in the zone, picking the zone apart. These are things that he's doing, and then on top of it, the ability to run, understanding when to get down and not take a hit. This guy is sharp, and these are things, and the decisions that he's making and what he's doing, these are intangibles and things that you just can't find and see in practice. You have to have live reps. And having live reps, I'm telling you, he was the guy that I was saying the whole preseason. This is a guy I'm really excited to watch. I really want to watch. I think that this guy could be an X factor. I've got him in the middle of the field just because he's a rookie, and we don't have a lot of game tape on him. But man, he is proving everybody wrong, and he's starting to come on. He understands the offense. He runs the offense, runs it like a professional and like a professional should. And let's just start there. This offense and this team, they found their identity. They know who they are, and they're playing dang good football. I'm really taken back. I mean, when you look at his passing stats, okay, he was 20 for 27. Now, most of those were like throwaways. He had one bad ball that he threw all game. That was it. The guy threw for 264 yards, and he had one touchdown on the day. He understands in this offense what they're doing. They're going to run the heck out of the ball. He ran for 63 yards. Now, granted, he ran 16 times. There were a few times where I loved it. Chuck Long's like, Jordan, you need to hand off the ball. And I'm like, yeah, you need to a little bit more. You could definitely tell that probably, Kristen Michael was running. He got 12 carries, and Matt Jones got 15 carries on the day. You could tell that Seattle had a game plan, and the game plan was we're going to shut down this running game. We are going to keep them within the tackles, and we are not going to let these running backs beat us. And they didn't. I mean, it was all Tamau and Teamu, however you want to pronounce it. And I apologize, guys. I've watched enough games and hear him say his name. He is fantastic. I mean, we're going to be hearing his name from, here on out the rest of the season. But it all fell on his shoulders. And listen, he stepped up to the plate. He was the guy that took it on his shoulder. He said, no problem, guys. I got this. We got this. And they walked home. Well, they were already home and ended up with the wind. Well, I'm sorry, the win with the wind. There's no win in there. They're in a stadium. But really, when you go, it was a tale of kind of, for me, they went through and, they held it there in the end, and they scored when they needed to, and to keep things going. But it was a tale of two halves for me. And let's go ahead and with that, let's turn over to the Seattle Dragons. This Dragons team, they have a good defense, and the defense is they got gashed last week, and this week they actually, when BJ Daniels came in the game, that reinvigorated them to play better, to play harder. And I was really impressed with them. They are going to pick some teams off, and they're going to come away with some wins. Now, they only have one win so far this season. I don't see them really, again, kind of like LA. I think they're going to be a hard win for a lot of teams, but I just don't see them making the playoffs. I see them about 500, and a lot of it has to do with these first few weeks not getting those wins and having those losses and those hard-fought losses. But it was a tale of two halves. It was a tale of a half with, Brandon Silvers, being inaccurate, making bad decisions, and not really giving that offense an opportunity to really develop and be itself. And let's transfer over to the second half. The second half, BJ Daniels came in, and it was a different feel and a different team. Now, granted, they didn't pull it off in the end, and he made some mistakes down the end. But listen, you're down with 4 minutes left to go. You need to press the ball, and you need to do that. So I don't necessarily give him too much guff with that. The other thing is that these wide receivers are not used to being able to develop these routes. Brandon Silvers hasn't played real well in the pocket, and he hasn't really had the time, and he's done a lot of checkdowns and that with it, to where the guys haven't been able to develop these longer, routes, and they didn't have the chemistry with BJ Daniels like they do Silvers, to where they're running a specific thing for Silvers and they're not running it. You could tell the miscommunication that was there on a few of the throws. Now, I will say that BJ Daniels had a couple bad throws, and that was probably an ill-advised throw on the interception, definitely there. But I will say, coming away from it, he was 5 for 10. And I would say that that's probably a little skewed, just because of where they were in the game, meaning they needed to pass, they needed to throw the ball, he needed to force some throws that maybe he shouldn't have, and they got themselves in a bad place there in the second half. I tell you what, though, they came back and they made a nice march, and it was really all on the shoulders of B.J. Daniels, and I am telling you, this league needs to sit back, they need to listen, and I'm talking to you, Coach Tressman. You just let a guy in Quentin Flowers, who was the successor to B.J. Daniels, the guy that we just see go electric. He ran for 84 yards, threw for 100 yards, and electrified that Seattle offense. Listen, Tressman, you have better pieces and more dynamic players than the Seattle team, and Quentin Flowers is pretty much I don't know. Some people say that he's better than B.J. Daniels. I don't know. I haven't really seen enough of them, and I didn't really watch either one of them in college. But I do know that when you look at this, Quentin Flowers was a guy that can do what B.J. Daniels just did and ignite that offense if he was given a real shot in there outside of just being this one-off play guy, and kind of giving him a little sprinkles here and there. B.J. Daniels came in and electrified this crowd. Electrified this team. He really just stepped in and it gave this team life. It opened some things up for the running backs that were having a hard time running throughout the game. Now, I will say, St. Louis did a heck of a job. I mean, they're going on 10-play drives, and they really, especially in the first half, the time of possession, there's no comparison there. I mean, Seattle didn't have the ball hardly at all, and St. Louis, they just ran. They just ran plays and they just 8 clock, and punched the ball in the end zone. That's kind of what they did. And so you have this Seattle team that didn't really have a whole lot of shot, and a lot of it was they were really anemic. And when you have 3 really good running backs and you don't have a quarterback that can take advantage of play action, that's what you get. I'll tell you the play for me that should set up the rest of the offense for at least the next game for the Seattle Dragons was when B.J. Daniels pulled the ball, acted like he was going to run. The safety and the cornerback came up and he threw it over top of them for the long pass. They really need to look into that RPO game. They really need to develop that, especially with their running backs. I don't think that they have the deep threat or the wide receiving core that the BattleHawks do, but I think that they can exploit that, and I think that they could really pull some wins off in that. And who knows? I mean, they have 3 losses right now. I could see them, turning around, winning 5 games, 5 of the last 6 games, and have themselves right in a spot there to possibly, make the playoffs if they figure this offense out. The defense is not necessarily the issue. Now, granted, they've been gashed a few times, and yeah, they gave up quite a few yards today, but only giving up 23 points isn't that bad in this scheme. And they scored most of their points in the second half. They scored 13 points in the second half. So, as I look at this, I think that there's a couple things that B.J. Daniels does, and I've touched on this before. He opens up that offense, opens up the running game to where I think that they're going to be able to actually utilize Trey Williams. Listen, they try to get him in the game, but with Brandon Silvers, he just can't get him an opportunity to put him in a place where he can be an athlete and make people miss. He just hasn't been given that opportunity, and he literally right now is their home run hitter that they need to figure out how to use. I think that they've got some other pieces there. Austin Prohl and some of the other guys, I think that can, Keenan Reynolds and that I think they can step up and really pick some things up. I will say that, there were some guys that made some drops for Seattle. And the other thing too, in some of the other games too, you're seeing it, these guys, they're finally starting to get live reps, and you're not used to some of that stuff to where, they're starting to run without the ball, and that to where you can see they're starting to get in the game, and I love it. I love how this game is just kind of going and developing. And in this, I love these storylines of these teams evolving, and you're starting to see them become a team. And I think that this Seattle Dragons team is going to look totally different next week. And, people are going to be surprised with this offense. I think that they're going to get a spark. The other thing with it, too, is I think that Jim Zorn is starting to kind of, not that he didn't understand the offense, but I think he's starting to get a little familiar with it and what he wants to do and how he wants to look at it, especially with BJ Daniels. If Brandon Silvers comes back out and he's a starter next week, I think that he's got rocks in his head. BJ Daniels played just fine. He and his wide receivers, they need to get on the same page. I think that'll take care of some of those errant throws, and he needs some more reps, and they need to really, work on a game plan and that for him. I would like to see the running backs get added into that game a little bit more RPO. I know BJ Daniels hadn't been on the field, and so he kept the ball. But he kept the ball, and I loved it. That run with Gardner where they needed 3 yards. That was the perfect time to hand the ball because they were all thinking, because he had pulled out so many times, that he was going to keep the ball. And when he gave that ball to Gardner, boom, and popped it off, that's great. Like I said, I think that he can be electrifying for this team. So as I look at things, listen, I was 1-1 on today, but I was a happy 1-1. Why? Because I got good football. I got some good storylines. I got to watch a couple of 2 different chess matches and win some games. And listen, with this too, this brings with LA, the win with the Guardians, this brings the Guardians right back there into the fold with everybody else. And the BattleHawks, they're up there with that. And so, it's showing, and we're starting to see, listen, there are teams are figuring things out, and this league has parity, and we're starting to see it in the standings. Now, granted, we only had 4 games, so it's hard because things are they've been drastic, right, with some of them, and so now we're going to see, that there isn't that much gaps of things, and that it showed it in these games. Seattle Dragons, they're 1-3. And the BattleHawks are 3-1, and it was a 7-point game, and really it was a 4-point game that in the fourth quarter at one point. And so a dropped pass is the difference between it being a 1-point game. They're not that different of teams, and that's why I'm saying Seattle is a good team. They've got a good defense, and if this offense can puts together some drives and really grind it out on some teams, you're going to see the wins start to add up for them. All in all, listen, I had fun. I hope you had fun. And that, again, goes back to the same point. The XFL is fun football. It's good football. It's fun, and we need to continue to support it. I love all of your guys' comments, everything that you guys have been saying down in the comments, that you support the XFL, that you watch the XFL. Even when you're not at home, you make sure that they turn that game on. I appreciate it, guys. Because, listen, for us to keep this football, it's going to need to be us fans are going to be the ones out there saying that we want it. Because the national pundits and a lot of the talk heads and all of that everybody's listening to on the radio, on ESPN, those morning shows, all of that type of stuff, especially, some of the other networks that don't have any games, and I think that they're a little jealous that they don't. They're not talking about the XFL like we are. And they have to talk about the XFL sometimes because it's the hottest thing. We'll see what the ratings are like. But last week, the ratings were down a little bit. But they're still better than just about every other sport out there in ratings. And so when you look at that, this time of the year, they've got the best ratings. They're better than most of the all of the other professional sports. That's a big deal. That's good. And if that's the case, they need to cover this stuff, and they haven't been doing their homework, and it shows. And so we'll just take this up from grassroots. It'll just be us doing it, taking her up. We'll talk about it. We'll have fun discussing it. And listen, in the end, everybody is is going to get what they want. We're going to get more football, which is what we want. The players are going to get to be able to play and not either not be playing football or be buried. Like I said, I've said this too many times, but I keep wanting to say it. When you got guys like Tamu or Teamu, however you want to pronounce it, when you got guys like PJ Walker, when you've got guys like today, Luis Perez, Josh Johnson, even BJ Daniels, all of these guys, and Cardell Jones, outside of last week. These guys are guys who should be throwing the football around. These should not be holding clipboards. And listen, there's a ton of other guys who are on the NFL sidelines that shouldn't be holding clipboards, who should be throwing the ball around. And I'm not talking about these guys that are making millions who are standing there who really, aren't very good at all when they come in and play. But I'm talking about those guys that haven't got a shot, that can really play, and so there are a lot of them that aren't in the league, and we're starting to see that. You cannot tell me that Tamau, what he did today, was not a professional level of quarterback play. You can't tell me that. I'd love to see, your professional quarterback analysis guy who can sit there at the bar and look at one play and tell me exactly how the XFL was. I'd like him to sit down for 6 minutes and look at the highlights of this guy, or look at every one of his throws and every one of his snaps, which you can do in 6 minutes, in a 6-minute video, and tell me what's there that isn't a professional quarterback. You can't. This is good football. It's good stuff. And again, I went on a rant. I apologize. But I love watching this game. I love football. This is good football. The XFL is giving us what we want, and we just need to support it. Like I said, you don't need to spend a dime. All you need to do is get out there, tweet about it, put a Facebook post about it, talk about it, tell your friends, and let's all just enjoy sitting around, watching football, and then talking about it afterwards. All right, guys, I'm done for the night. I'm going to go get some sleep, and I'm going to look forward to watching those games with you guys tomorrow. Leave me some comments down in the comment section. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on both of the games that we had today. All right, well, I know that you're busy, and I know that I'm busy, so let's get on out of here. Have a good night. Bye.